Liebe Zuhörerinnen und Zuhörer, ich freue mich sehr, dass Sie bei der Literaturwoche während der Europawoche zugeschaltet haben. Heute möchte ich Ihnen den Beitrag aus Glenrothes zeigen. Wir haben hier Andrew Ferguson, der sich uns gleich noch kurz vorstellen wird, bevor er aus seinem Buch liest.
Thank you, Zina. It's a pleasure to be here, and real pleasure to be speaking to my hometown's twin town, Budlingen. I actually live within about 50 meters of Budlingen Way, which, as you may know, is the pathway that runs all the way through the centre of Glenrothes. So. Which I walk on almost every day. So I'm Andrew Ferguson. I'm 58. I first came to Glenrothes when I was 9 weeks old, so I wasn't actually born there, but very nearly. And I grew up here and went to one of the local schools. I left for university, and I never intended to come back, because at that age you don't. You leave your hometown and just want to see the world. Many years later, here I am. My work brought me back to Glenrothes and got married, and we've brought up our daughter here. She's now grown up. So I'm Glenrothes through and through.
Andrew, Sie sind Schriftsteller und Musiker, wie ich bereits erfahren durfte. Können Sie mir etwas darüber erzählen, wie Sie zum Schreiben gekommen sind?
Writing's a hobby for me. I was, I suppose, inspired. My father was a writer, and he actually wrote 3 books about Glenrothes, as well as many other things. There was always a bias, I suppose, towards creative things rather than. We used to always joke about how terrible we were at science and maths and all these things, but our family is quite good at music and writing and so on. So I just fell into it, and I've always enjoyed it. It's always been something that is a good way of getting away from the stresses of the day. They say that writers write to try and make sense of the world around them, and so it all comes out. Out of your subconscious, and I'm not sure if that's true or not, but as I say, it's been a hobby of mine over many years. I've published short stories, poems, the novel, which we'll talk about, a couple of other non-fiction books, including a legal textbook. Until recently, I worked in the Fife Council, and that was principally as a lawyer. So my day job was as a lawyer, which in a strange way is also working with words, just in a different way.
Vielen Dank, Andrew, für den Einblick in Ihr Leben. Was uns natürlich auch interessiert, schreiben Sie gerade ein neues Buch? Haben Sie überhaupt Zeit zum Schreiben?
One of the reasons I left my job at the council and decided to work part-time was to devote more time to creative things. But to be honest, at the moment I'm more into songwriting and working with words and music. I do have when I eventually retire properly and stop working altogether, I do have a plan to write a travel book, which we travel in when we can travel. We travel in Spain quite a lot, and so I have this idea of writing a book about our travels in Spain.
Also können wir darauf gespannt sein, Neues von Ihnen zu lesen oder zu hören. Und vielleicht können wir Sie auch schon nächstes Jahr wieder hier begrüßen. Andrew, noch eine letzte Frage, bevor Sie mit Ihrer Lesung starten können. Und zwar feiern wir ja gerade die Europawoche, also die Gründung der Europäischen Union. Wie ist denn Ihr Bezug zu Europa, vor allem mit dem Hintergrund, dass Sie in Schottland ja mit den Folgen des Brexit umgehen müssen und konfrontiert sind? Wie geht's Ihnen damit?
I am one of the 2/3 of Scottish people that voted against Brexit, and happened anyway. I'm not going to be too political about it, but my heart is very, very firmly with Europe and with the EU. And for me, growing up as a child of the 60s, the whole idea of twin towns came from the same spirit as the EU being created and Britain joining the European community, as it was called then, of greater international understanding and cooperation. So I think it's a terrible idea, actually. There's a lot of people in Scotland and a lot of people in the rest of the UK think it's a terrible idea, but it's been one of these things, unfortunately, that UK-wise split the country 50-50. As I say, in Scotland, we were more in favour of staying in Europe, but we'll just have to see what happens.
Auch wenn der Brexit vielleicht gegenseitige Besuche schwieriger macht, so bleiben wir trotzdem mit unserer Partnerstadt in regelmäßigem Kontakt und in Verbindung. Vor allem freuen wir uns heute, Sie stellvertretend für Glenrothes begrüßen zu dürfen und ich wünsche Ihnen allen jetzt viel Spaß mit der Lesung.
Thanks very much. So, one of the central characters in the novel, Simon English, has just been rescued from a dangerous situation by Detective Sergeant Jim Martin, who's investigating the suspicious death of a man at the borrowed Edinburgh flat Simon is staying in, while assigned to the Edinburgh office of his legal firm. Simon doesn't know whether to trust him yet. He's beginning to suspect the death is connected to something much bigger, something the police might be involved in. They talk in an all-night cafe near Leith Docks. Martin sips his black tea with 4 sugars, looking at me over the rim of the mug all the time, like I'm some kid who needs to be told there's no Santa Claus. Here's the thing, Mr. English. Commercial property is no the only big business going on in Edinburgh. It used to be mainly drugs this lot were into, but human trafficking is much more profitable for them. Smuggle 10 Romanians in, and you've got what you might call a captive workforce, either to work in one of your saunas if they're good looking enough, or sell on to one of the gangmasters for any number of shit jobs that the locals can't be arsed getting out of their beds to do. These guys are big time now, Mr. English, at least in Edinburgh terms. They have connections everywhere. Just at that moment, the docker, who's looked round at us twice now, gets up from the table, avoids looking at us, and goes outside, taking a mobile out of his pocket. I decide it's time to offer something up in this negotiation. Do these connections everywhere include the police then? Martin suddenly sits very still, his eyes narrowing slightly. There's a long pause, but I'm used to holding out in a silence. Eventually, he says, maybe. What makes you say that? The guy who was on the mobile outside has come back in now. Something prompts Martin to look round at him. Again, the guy avoids eye contact. Do you know him? Probably, Martin says and looks at me. Have you finished your tea? I nod and we get up to go, feeling several pairs of eyes watch us leave. When I was at university, there was a friend of a friend had a paranoid episode. Everyone said it was because he smoked too much blow, but then we all did. He was convinced that an ex-girlfriend was following him around. His mate told me we were on a bus once and the guy just got up and got off at a stop somewhere completely random and started running. When my mate caught up with him, he was in a shop getting the shopkeeper to phone the cops. He'd been convinced he had seen the ex-girlfriend sitting 2 rows back in the same bus. My mate hadn't, of course, but there was no convincing him. Anyway, I'm starting to know how the poor bastard felt as we climb into Martin's car and set off in the cold light of dawn. As we reach Junction Street and stop at the lights, Martin says, "You haven't answered my question." I take a deep breath. Say, hypothetically, a previous occupant of my flat had left a bag of a certain substance Just a small bag, mind, for personal use only, under the floorboards. Might as well blame Bruce Reid for it now. And say, after your scene of crime people did the sweep, that bag of coke had disappeared. You would know all about it, right? The lights change and Martin guns the accelerator. Of course. Do you? No. There's another long silence as we head up Leith Walk. Around us, Edinburgh is starting to wake up in a leisurely kind of Saturday morning way. We overtake an early morning bus, then 2 taxis at Elm Row dawdling along. At the top of Leith Walk, still saying nothing, Martin hangs a right onto Queen Street to take us into the new town. Eventually, he says, "Do you ken your Greek mythology, Mr. English?" "Not really. What's coming here?" "Well, you might have heard of the Hydra, the many-headed monster. Every time you cut one of its heads off, another one grows back. That's what organised crime is always compared to. Personally, I prefer to think of it as a squid. Ken, the tentacles." As he's saying this, he's glanced once, then twice in the rearview mirror. "I guess I see what you mean. And where do you think this one has got its tentacles?" Another glance in the rear view. The guy's making me nervous again. I look behind, but all I can see is a taxi. One set of lights back. You could well be right that this organisation has an insider in Fetus HQ. I've been thinking that for some time now, to be completely honest with you. But I also think you should be thinking about somewhere closer to home. This throws me completely. What, you mean Bruce Reid? Is that why he had to disappear down south? Martin hangs a right again, down Howe Street. "Well, what do you think?" he says. "I think of Tony Han saying, 'Fuck, they,' when he heard about Jimmy Ahmed. Al and Bradley cozying up to the 2 girls as if they'd first met them at Mary Erskine's. And I say exactly nothing. Martin pulls in just above Jamaica Street, the connecting street that will take me along to my car. The taxi that was behind us rattles past and then pulls in about 50 yards further down. It sits there, its engine running. Martin turns to look at me. "Look, I can understand exactly how you're feeling right now. I've just confirmed to you what you were beginning to find out for yourself, that the entire Edinburgh branch of the legal firm you work for is in cahoots with a gang of organised criminals that had something to do with why you got dosed up with a hypnol and a guy ended up dead in your bath." I nod slightly. "OK," he says. "You've no particular reason to trust me, Mr. English. If I tell you I had nothing to do with your bag of drugs going missing, and that I'm as keen as you are to bring these bastards to book, I understand how you can't take that at face value." He fumbles in his jacket pocket and brings out a slightly battered business card and a pen, which he uses to write a number on the card. As he hands it over to me, we both glance down at the taxi, which is still idling 50 yards further down the street. "On that basis, I don't want you telling me where you're going to stay for now. I'll have to report the fact that I picked you up in Auchendrossen, but I'll say that you legged it without telling me where you'd be. When you're ready to talk to me, that's my home number. Call me on that." I nod again. "OK. Now, get out of the car, get to your own, and disappear for the rest of the weekend. I'll deal with our friend, the taxi driver." The minute I'm out of the door of the car, Martin takes off in a squeal of tyres on the cobbles, heading for the taxi. Just before I disappear down the lane, I look again and he's dumped his car right across the front of the taxi, then sprinted round and wrenched its door open before the guy can reverse back towards me. That's enough for me. I break into a run that would make Usain fucking Bolt get a bit of a shift on and reach India Street in a new personal best. Me and Alexis get the fuck out of Edinburgh. Destination, Livingston.
So, jetzt darf ich Ihnen unsere schottische Partnerstadt Glenrothes vorstellen. Wir stehen hier am unteren See im Rosengarten. Das war ein Geschenk von Glenrothes an die Stadt Böblingen anlässlich der Landesgartenschau 1996. wenn unsere Vegetation noch ein bisschen weiter vorangeschritten ist, vielleicht kommen Sie mal her und schauen sich das Ganze an. Glenrothes liegt in Schottland nahe Edinburgh, ist ein bisschen weiter weg als die anderen beteiligten Partnerstädte. Im Zweifelsfall muss man auch hinfliegen, aber lassen Sie sich gesagt sein, es ist die Reise allemal wert. Glenrothes hat ungefähr 40.000 Einwohner und hat eine ganz besondere Stadtgeschichte. Die Stadt ist nämlich erst gut 70 Jahre alt, wurde damals zusammen mit anderen sogenannten Gartenstädten gegründet auf Initiative der Queen. Diese Städte wurden auf dem Reißbrett geplant als Wohngebiete für Minenarbeiter in den Kohlenminen. Und die wurden auch zunächst von einer privaten Firma verwaltet. Also ganz anders, als wir das bei uns mit der öffentlichen Verwaltung kennen. Die Kohlemine bei Glenrothes konnte nicht sehr lange ausgebeutet werden. Die Stadt war dann im Zugzwang, sich wirtschaftlich neu zu erfinden. Was aber gelungen ist, Glenrothes ist heute eine blühende Technologiestadt. Ja, in den frühen 90er Jahren gab es dann eine Verwaltungsreform, wo diese private Verwaltung der Stadt aufgehoben wurde und Glenrothes ging auf in der Region Fife. Und es wird seither von dort zentral verwaltet. Deswegen haben wir besonderes Glück, dass es in unserer Partnerstadt einen Partnerstadtverein gibt, wo sich Ehrenamtliche zusätzlich individuell um unsere Partnerschaft kümmern. Allen voran dort der Vorsitzende John Vaughan, der seit vielen Jahren sehr engagiert und sehr kompetent ehrenamtlich tätig ist und eigentlich für kein Anliegen, das aus Böblingen rübergespielt wird, nicht einen Ansprechpartner oder Andockpunkt finden kann. Gründungsjubiläum der Städtepartnerschaft ist 1971. Das heißt, wir feiern dieses Jahr goldene Hochzeit. Unsere Hoffnung wäre, dass wir das Ganze im Rahmen des Stadtfestes tun können. Müssen wir abwarten, ob es sich verwirklichen lässt. Wir haben auf jeden Fall schöne Erinnerungen an das Stadtfest vor 3 Jahren, als wir eine junge Tanzgruppe aus Glenrothes zu Besuch hatten, die die Stadtfestbühnen gerockt hat. Vielleicht erinnern Sie sich daran.